Good afternoon. The time is now 5:31 p.m. on May 18th, 2016, and this meeting of the District of Columbia State Board of Education is now called to order. The roll will now be called to determine the presence of a quorum. Mr. Hayworth?
Mr. Jacobson.
Present.
Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams. Ms. Lord.
Present.
Ms. Wilson-Phelan. Ms. Wilson-Phelan. Ms. Wattenberg.
Present.
Ms. Anderson.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones. Mr. Whedon.
Present.
Ms. Jolly.
Here.
Mr. Contreras.
Present.
Ms. Whittington.
Present.
Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Hayworth. A quorum has been determined, and the State Board will now proceed with the business portion of our meeting. Members, we have a draft agenda before us. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda as presented? There being no corrections, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Whedon.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lord. Also, Ms. Wilson-Phelan from Ward 1 has joined us. The motion being properly moved and seconded, I'll ask for the yeas and nays. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the May 4th, 2016 working session. Are there corrections or additions to the minutes? The corrections offered by Ms. Wilson-Phelan have been incorporated already. There are additional amendments. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Wilson-Phelan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Jolly. The motion being properly moved and seconded, I ask for the yeas and nays. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Good evening. My name is Jack Jacobson, and I am President and Ward 2 Representative of the State Board of Education. On behalf of the members of the District of Columbia State Board of Education, I want to welcome our guests and our viewing public to our Wednesday, May 18th, 2016 public meeting. The State Board holds its regularly scheduled meetings on the third Wednesday of every month here in the Old Council Chambers at 441 4th Street Northwest. The members of the State Board of Education welcome your participation and your support in our efforts to improve education in the nation's capital. The State Board of Education has been working closely with our friends at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education this year to ensure that the district takes a holistic and comprehensive approach to adjusting our statewide accountability plan to comply with the new federal Every Student Succeeds Act. The State Board is taking the lead on making sure that the community's voice is heard in the development of a plan, and within a week, we will be announcing community meetings across the district to ensure that all of our parents, students, teachers, and community members will have the opportunity to speak with State Board members and their neighbors about our vision, our shared vision for successful schools. I want to thank Superintendent Kang and her team for their commitment to that involvement, and I am excited to announce that the State Board has created another avenue for residents to be involved in this process. On our website, sboe.dc.gov/ESSA, we have added a survey in English, Spanish, and Amharic that will help us understand exactly what our residents think is important for us to consider as we develop the statewide accountability plan. Please note this is the beginning of our conversation. This plan will allow us to determine which schools are successful and provide supports to the schools that are struggling. Tonight's agenda includes recognizing 4 outstanding District of Columbia students. The State Board is grateful that the students and their parents could join us here tonight to celebrate their remarkable achievements. I also want to note that our FY 15-16 student representatives will soon be leaving us for college. Their input has been vital this year, and we are now accepting applications for the 2016-17 student representatives and the Student Advisory Committee. The application can be found on our website at sboe.dc.gov/student-voices. We are also very much looking forward to hearing from Deputy Mayor for Education, Jenny Niles, on school modernization and facilities, including the reports of lead contamination in district schools. I know that the deputy mayor and her team have brought the full resources of the district government to bear to ensure that our students are safe, and I want to thank her for her efforts. We look forward to hearing more about how her office is ensuring student safety across the district. We're now moving to ceremonial resolutions. Tonight, we will actually first hear from the State Superintendent of Education, Hansel Kang.
Thank you, President Jacobson. My remarks will be very brief, but thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Hansel Kang. I'm the State Superintendent of Education. And tonight, I just wanted to first congratulate in advance the students being honored this evening for their accomplishments, and look forward to hearing more about what you go on to do in the future. And secondly, I just wanted to note that all of the State Board of Education members, I think, have been invited and are aware of this event, but just wanted to flag it one more time, that this Friday, the Office of the State Superintendent of Education is excited to host the second annual DC Educator Awards Dinner from 6:30 to 8 p.m., which is a reception we're holding in honor of the DC Teacher of the Year, the DC History Teacher of the Year, the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching finalists, and other excellent educators across the district. So we look forward to seeing some of you there, hopefully.
Thank you, Superintendent Kang, and my apologies. Now, ceremonial resolutions for our students. Tonight, the State Board of Education is honored to recognize 4 students who embody the word excellence. I would like to invite Noah Kravitz, Rachel Page, Colby Bosley-Smith, and Rachel Snyderman to come to the table at the front of the room while there are 4 chairs here, if you could all just come forward. Take your seats while we talk about your achievements briefly. The State Board will consider the resolutions in 2 blocks. First, the delegates to the National Youth Science Camp, and then the district's U.S. Presidential Scholars. I'd like to ask our at-large member, Mary Lord, to introduce the National Youth Science Camp and this year's D.C. delegation, and to read the resolutions into the record. We will then ask Ms. Snyderman and Ms. Bosley-Smith to discuss their experience with science. Ms. Lord.
Thank you. Mr. Jacobson, would it be all right if the members who represent the wards that these 2 scholars hail from read the resolution so I don't have to do all the talking?
If they're prepared to do so, we would welcome that.
Would you be prepared? Okay. Thank you very much. Do you have copies of the resolution? Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to have served as the selection committee coordinator, state selection committee coordinator for the National Youth Science Camp. This is an unprecedented opportunity for our young scholars of science, technology, engineering, and math to participate in a prestigious science education program in the beautiful rolling hills of Bartow, West Virginia, all expenses covered. They do science experiments, they hear lectures and seminars, and somewhere in the point of, they take field trips to the radio telescopes, and at some point they come back to the District of Columbia to hobnob with Capitol Hill congressmen, the head of NASA, inventors like Dean Kamen, who created the first robotics competition. In short, it's a big, big deal, and I am thrilled to be able to present the outstanding members of the class of 2016, one from Capital City Public Charter School, one from Wilson High School, who will be representing the District of Columbia with peers from around the country and around the world this summer in West Virginia. Thank you.
And now, Ms. Wattenberg and Ms. Anderson, would you like to read the resolutions into the record?
Anderson is still looking for her resolution. Oh. Okay, honoring Rachel Snyderman. Whereas 2 graduating high school seniors each year are selected to represent the District of Columbia at the prestigious National Youth Science Camp in West Virginia. Whereas the National Youth Science Camp, which offers the opportunity to exchange ideas, study science, and participate in outdoor learning experiences with peers from around the country and the world, is granted to students who have exhibited leadership and outstanding scholastic achievement in science and mathematics. Whereas Rachel Snyderman of Ward 3 will represent the District of Columbia as a delegate to the 2016 National Youth Science Camp in West Virginia this summer. Whereas the State Board of Education notes that Rachel Snyderman has excelled in science and mathematics throughout her high school career at Woodrow Wilson High School. Whereas Rachel Snyderman has been an honor roll student throughout her educational career, as well as an AP Scholar with distinction, and will attend Brandeis University to major in physics. Whereas Rachel Snyderman is a member of the varsity crew team, concert choir, and the Wilson Singers Jazz Ensemble. Whereas Rachel Snyderman also serves as a social justice advocate through the Wilson Human Rights Club, Operation Understanding DC, and Youth Action Health Council. Whereas Rachel Snyderman's interests in astrophysics and the universe were cultivated through a 2014 internship at the National Air and Space Museum, an engineering camp at the University of Maryland, and her AP Physics C course. Therefore, be it resolved that the District of Columbia State Board of Education recognizes Rachel Snyderman for academic excellence and honors her as one of the District of Columbia's most promising and creative young science leaders in the high school graduating class of 2016. And can I just say, Rachel lives near me. Rachel went to the went to Sunday school with my daughter in elementary school, and then they were together at Deal Middle School. So I have known Rachel since she looked very different and was much littler, and it's really wonderful to see you all grown up and to see what you've done with the education that you've gotten in our school. So congratulations to you and to your family out there.
Thank you.
Colby Bosley Smith. Honoring Colby Bosley Smith, District of Columbia delegate to the 2016 National Youth Science Camp. Whereas 2 graduating high school seniors each year are selected to represent the District of Columbia at the prestigious National Youth Science Camp in West Virginia. Whereas the National Youth Science Camp, which offers the opportunity to exchange ideas, study science, and participate in outdoor learning experiences with peers from around the country and world, is granted to students who have exhibited leadership and outstanding scholastic achievement in science and mathematics. Whereas Colby Bosley Smith of Ward 4 will represent the District of Columbia as a delegate to the 2016 National Youth Science Camp this summer. Whereas the District of Columbia State Board of Education recognizes Colby Bosley Smith for excellence in science and mathematics throughout her high school career at Capital City Public Charter School. Whereas Colby Bosley Smith is an all-star athlete on the varsity volleyball and basketball teams and statistician for Little League games and basketball games at the Jelliff Boys and Girls Club. Whereas Colby Bosley Smith was chief editor of the yearbook, member of the Bike Club, and member of the newly formed Science Club that meets to discuss scientific literature with the retired physicist. Whereas Colby Bosley Smith has written several award-winning papers on the environment and has been invited to attend conferences on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education and the environment. Whereas Colby Bosley Smith intends to major in environmental science at the University of Vermont, where she's been awarded a President's Scholarship. Therefore, be it resolved that the District of Columbia State Board of Education recognizes Colby Bosley Smith for academic excellence and honors her as one of the District of Columbia's most promising and creative young science leaders in the high school graduating class of 2016. Signed by President Jack Jacobson, Mary Lord, at-large member, and dated today's date, May 18, 2016. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you both. Now, Ms. Snyderman and Ms. Bosley Smith, would you like to say a few words? You've got a couple minutes. Just make sure your microphone is turned on. The green light will be shining, and whomever would like to go first is welcome to.
Hello, good evening. First of all, I would like to... It's on. I would like to thank the entire State Board of Education for this amazing opportunity. I'm really looking forward to spending the summer in West Virginia and learning about all different types of science through this camp. I've always loved science since I was little. Growing up in DC, I think, was an amazing opportunity to explore science, especially because my father's office, when I was growing up, was directly across the street from the National Air and Space Museum. So whenever we would go visit Dad at the office, we'd spend the afternoon at the museum, and I immediately fell in love. It's been my favorite museum since then. I just couldn't believe all of the fantastical images of faraway galaxies and star clusters that filled the universe and were just outside of our own atmosphere. So since then, I was able to get an internship at the museum 2 years ago. And really being able to go behind the scenes and learn about the science behind all of the amazing stars and planets in the sky through solar observation and spectroscopy and gyroscopics, I really was able to delve deeper into the science that fascinated me since I was little. And through that, I've decided that this is what I want to study and go into as I pursue a physics degree in college. Also, when I attend Brandeis this fall, I'm going to be joining the Quantitative Biology Research Fellowship, which is an opportunity for interdisciplinary science research. We will be looking at biological problems through a physics lens. And I think this is really exciting, and this is also one reason that I was really excited to apply for this program this summer, is because I really love the idea of looking at problems from different perspectives and being able to use different areas of science in order to solve problems. So thank you again for this amazing opportunity. I'm so glad to be here tonight.
Thank you so much. You're very accomplished. Ms. Bosley-Smith?
So thank you once again for helping me secure this opportunity to attend the National Youth Science Camp. I have also been a huge fan of science for a long time. I am going to University of Vermont to study environmental science, and living in DC and going to Rock Creek Park, to the Chesapeake Bay, and various places, the Appalachian Trail, I have really been exposed to lots of beautiful natural places. And so I hope to learn more about those as in the future this summer in West Virginia and in Vermont next fall. I am particularly interested in exploring ecology. This past year, I completed a year-long expedition on oysters in the Chesapeake Bay and their benefits to reducing pollution. So I hope to go into that further. And I am also very interested in learning more about climate change and what we can do to mitigate the effects of climate change. So yes, that is what I hope to do with my future. And that's what I hope to learn more about this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bosley-Smith. We're incredibly proud of you both, and we thank you for all of your hard work. We know that this is a wonderful opportunity, and we look forward to hearing from you afterwards. If you'd like to send us a note, if you send it to Mary, I'm sure she would send it along to the rest of the board, telling us about your experiences. Members, I would now entertain a joint motion on the resolutions.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Wattenberg. Is there a second on the resolutions? Second by Ms. Lord. Now that the motion is properly moved and seconded, I'll ask for the yeas and nays. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The resolutions are approved. We'll ask you to stay for just a second. We're going to get some pictures after we do the other two ceremonial resolutions. I would again invite our Ward 3 member, Ruth Wattenberg, to discuss the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program and to read the resolution from the Woodrow Wilson student into the record. I'll take the Georgetown Day student, Mr. Kravitz. Then we'll ask Ms. Page and Mr. Kravitz to tell us about their achievements and plans for the future. Ms. Wattenberg?
Yeah, so let me read this. Whereas since 1964, the White House Commission on Presidential Scholars has selected one young man and one young woman from each state, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, and 15 additional individuals across the country who have demonstrated their excellence in academics, the arts, and career and technical education fields. Whereas the Commission has, for the past 30 years, selected 20 individuals as U.S. Presidential Scholars in the Arts, and for the first time, 20 U.S. Presidential Scholars in Career and Technical Education. Whereas the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program has honored 7,000 of the nation's top-performing students since 1964. Whereas the Commission selects scholars based on their academic success, artistic excellence, essays, school evaluations and transcripts, as well as evidence of community service, leadership, and commitment to high ideals. Whereas this year's 160 winners were selected out of 5,600 eligible candidates based on performance on the SAT or ACT, nominations made by chief state school officers or other organizations. Whereas Rachel S. Page of Woodrow Wilson High School was duly named a U.S. Presidential Scholar and a U.S. Presidential Scholar in the Arts. Therefore, be it resolved that the District of Columbia State Board of Ed recognizes Rachel S. Page for her academic and artistic achievements and honors her as one of the District of Columbia's most promising young scholars. So again, I just want to say it's my lucky night. I've also known Rachel since she was very little and a student at Janney. And congratulations to you. And I know when Rachel was very young, she was already very involved in writing and got a lot of accolades from her classmates, and I believe that is part of what propelled this award. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wattenberg. And I will read into the record Ceremonial Resolution 16-4, honoring Noah B. Kravitz, 2016 U.S. Presidential Scholar. Whereas since 1964, the White House Commission on Presidential Scholars has selected one man and one young woman from each state, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico, and 15 additional individuals across the country who have demonstrated their excellence in academics, the arts, and career and technical education fields. Whereas the Commission has, for the past 30 years, selected 20 individuals as U.S. Presidential Scholars in the Arts, and, for the first time, 20 U.S. Presidential Scholars in Career and Technical Education. Whereas the U.S. Presidential Scholars Program has honored 7,000 of the nation's top-performing students since 1964. Whereas the Commission selects scholars based on their academic success, artistic excellence, essays, school evaluations and transcripts, as well as evidence of community service, leadership, and commitment to high ideals. Whereas this year's 160 winners were selected out of 5,600 eligible candidates based on performance of the SAT or ACT, nominations made by chief state school officers or other organizations. Whereas Noah B. Kravitz of Georgetown Day School was named a 2016 U.S. Presidential Scholar. Therefore, be it resolved that the District of Columbia State Board of Education recognizes Noah B. Kravitz for his academic achievements and honors him as one of the District of Columbia's most promising young scholars. Congratulations to you both. I would ask you now if you could share a few words about yourselves with us, and I will ask Ms. Page to start, and then Mr. Kravitz, and make sure you use the microphone.
Hi, I'm Rachel Page. Just to reiterate what Rachel said, thank you so much for having us here. I'm so lucky to have this opportunity, and just thank you for being here. So I don't know, I've been writing my whole life, like Ms. Wattenberg said. So the Presidential Scholar in the Arts recognition that I got was because of my writing, and I write for my school newspaper. I'm the written content editor, which means I edit all of the articles, and I also do creative writing. So this June, I'm going to Carnegie Hall in New York City for the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, which is cool. And then in the fall, I'll be attending Columbia University, also New York City. So I'm hoping to pursue more writing and English and humanities things there. But again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Ms. Page, for joining us. Mr. Kravitz.
So as everyone's already said, thank you again for having us. It's such an honor to be able to represent the district at the Presidential Scholars Recognition Weekend in June. So I am interested in a lot of different things. I've studied a lot of different things ranging from math to linguistics through my time in high school. And I have to say I like all of it pretty much equally. So one of the best things about my high school experience is that I've been able to take in everything in the classroom and go beyond. So I've gone into school after hours to work on ceramics projects. And I've worked with teachers, with math teachers to learn discrete mathematics. And I'm currently working with a history teacher to pursue an independent study in Arabic. So I'm really interested in sort of learning a lot of different things for learning's sake and ideally bringing them together to create something greater. Next year, I plan to attend Yale University, where I still don't know what I'm going to study, hopefully all of the above. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I would now entertain a joint motion on the resolutions.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Lord. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wattenberg. Now that the motion is properly moved and seconded, I'll ask for the yeas and nays. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolutions pass unanimously. Now we will take a very short recess to give time for State Board members to congratulate the students and their families and to take a few photos. We will recess for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I guess we're moving.
Yeah, that's what I think you're good.
Please feel free to. We all look so natural here. Turn to the right, turn to the left. Everybody good? Now let's switch.
Rachel was very, when she saw that Rachel, that your Rachel was going to be. It's funny because I went to National Youth Science Camp. Did you really? 1982 from Colorado. So yeah. Yeah. It's crazy that it's going on. I give money to people.
All alarm. Please disregard all alarm. We will be conducting a test on the fire alarm system. Please disregard all alarms. I repeat, please disregard all alarms. This is only a test. You do not have to leave the building.
Scoot this way.
Physics C class represented.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yale. On my father's side went there, but I went the other direction. Make the best of it.
Thank you.
Trying to get the fire alarm squared away. I apologize for the delay in reconvening. The meeting of the State Board of Education is now called back to order. Welcome back. We will continue our meeting with public witnesses. The State Board welcomes public participation in activities under our authority. At every public meeting, we begin with testimony from public witnesses on education-related matters. If you are a member of the public and would like to speak at a future public meeting, please contact our staff at SBOE@dc.gov or by calling 202-741-0888. Our first, we're going to do two batches of public witnesses. We will start with the representatives from Capitol Hill Montessori, Shelby Wrights, and as I call your name, please feel free to come down to the witness table. A parent at Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan, Danica Petrosius, a parent at Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan, Scott Weishar, a parent at Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan, and Tiffany Brown, a parent at Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan. Feel free to take seats in whichever order. Testimony can be given to Ms. Jamika Briscoe Kendrick. So you'll each have 3 minutes. Make sure that the microphone light is on. And then there is a light notification up here on your top right of the table. Green, you're good. Yellow, you're running out of time. You got about 30 seconds left. And red, your time is up. Let's start on your left and then just go on down, introduce yourself, and read your testimony into the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Shelby Wrights. I'm a parent of 2 children at Capitol Hill Montessori, which has students from every ward. We live in Ward 6. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight. Capitol Hill Montessori was one of the DCPS schools where DGS recently identified lead in the water sources. This crisis has mobilized our parent community to improve the conditions not only at our school, but at schools across the district. I would like to provide an overview of the problems at our school, how we're working with the broader community on this issue, and what we see as the path forward. The written testimony that I've given to the clerk includes more specific information, including data and the links to some of the things that I'll talk about. So in terms of chronology, we learned in April 2016, so just a couple of months ago, via a blog post that tests conducted in August 2015, so 8 months prior, found 3 water sources with lead above the DC standard of 15 parts per billion. At no point after those tests, not for 8 months until the blog post, did DGS notify anyone at our school of the results. And it turned out the DGS had only tested 9 of our 94 water sources. So only after 2 community meetings with DGS, 2 rounds of written questions that we submitted, 4 rounds of public testimony, meetings with council members Allen and Grosso, plus numerous direct contacts with DGS, did we finally secure comprehensive testing of all 94 of our water sources. Long story short, over the last year, 8 of the sources at our school showed lead levels above 15 parts per billion. 4 of those sources are unquestionably used by children. Numerous other sources showed lead levels below the 15 parts per billion mark, but still above 0. DGS's failure to maintain a robust lead testing program is a threat to public health and an abdication of DC's responsibility to its children. On top of that, DGS's policies and conduct during this process have really been an embarrassment to the district's public oversight. In terms of working with the community, we feel that getting to the bottom of this issue should not have required hundreds of hours of parent work. We hope that other schools will not ever have to repeat the effort, and we believe that a coordinated effort will ensure a better testing program across the board. So to that end, we have started a number of initiatives, hopefully to make things better. We have a simple 2-page document that we have shared with other organizations that summarizes our experience, provides points of contact, and outlines a strategy for working productively with DGS, and you'll find that attached to my written testimony. We've created a designated page on our school website for information related to the lead testing. We formed an environmental committee made up of parents and teachers to study the issue in depth and provide policy recommendations. And finally, we've started a Yahoo group called Lead-Free DC Schools, where all schools and their communities can get involved and work with scientific experts to hopefully produce policy recommendations that the district could consider. The path forward, I think, must include a major overhaul of DGS's policies and a complete reevaluation of DC's standards for lead in schools. From the outset, DGS must conduct comprehensive testing of all water sources. They must use unique identifiers for each water source, which they have not been doing. They must have a robust system for tracking filter installation and replacements, and they must implement a policy to notify school communities of the lead test results. I think these are very obvious needs. They're basically low-hanging fruit. But DC, which means the City Council and DCPS and the DME and DOEE and DGS all working together, desperately needs new protocols and standards for addressing the lead in schools. No level of exposure is acceptable for young children. That means we need comprehensive policies for water sources as well as for paint and for soil. We need reliable testing, accessible data, and meaningful communication. It means that we need new best practices, and we at Capitol Hill Montessori are doing our part to determine perhaps what they should be. Our schools committee is working with scientific experts and doing independent research and comparing our testing data to industry best practices to develop our positions. Our experts will use the Lead-Free DC Schools Board to draft legislation to protect students from all sources from lead in DC public schools. I hope we can work productively with all of the public bodies that I've mentioned to make our schools safer for kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Thank you. Hi, I am Donica Petrocious, a Ward 6 parent at Capitol Montessori. Our school is PK through 6th grade in one building and a middle school in a trailer, and our families come from every ward. We love our school community, the teachers, the principal, the parents, and the Montessori approach, but our building is in need of serious stabilization and modernization. That's why we were shocked and disappointed in the mayor's capital improvement plan. It underfunded the capital budget and therefore left a number of schools completely off the SIP, including CHML, which had been slated for modernization in FY19. Our community has pulled together to try to understand what is happening and why. The mayor's plan was created without public input, lacked data, and did not prioritize facility conditions. At the Transportation Committee's DGS oversight hearing, Director Weaver testified upon questioning that CHML's facilities had never been assessed by DGS. The mayor's budget could not have been an objective, data-driven process because there was no data for our school. In addition, the mayor's metrics to rank schools are faulty and inconsistent. One, they did not provide a middle school priority consistently. CHML's middle school did not receive a priority like other middle schools. In deciding our capacity rating, though, it appears our trailer square footage that houses the middle school was counted for purposes of determining building utilization. This means that they do know we have a middle school. Two, they are built on neighborhood and ward metrics which have little meaning for a citywide schools like ours and a city fueled by out-of-boundary choice. Three, they made facility conditions arguably the most important criteria in deciding how to prioritize modernizations less than 10% weight. We are pleased that the council is taking a much better approach. We support the $4 million in stabilization funds for much needed HVAC system and ceilings repairs at our school. And we also support the Council's Education Committee's improved metrics for ranking schools that, one, include all schools, two, give all schools with children in the middle grades a middle school priority, and three, focus more on facility needs than on population or ward. When the new metrics are applied, our school ranks 4th greatest in need in all DCPS schools. We're disappointed, though, that the council budget still does not change the mayor's proposed SIP, which means our school still has a long way to go to secure funding for modernization. To us, the mayor's budget is misguided and underfunded. We strongly support DC Council's efforts to improve it, but even the council's budget leaves too many schools without help. Going forward, we ask, one, DGS fully assess our building and include parents and school administration in the process. We are the ones who know our buildings best. Two, the final budget for the city should include our stabilization funding, and DGS should work with us to implement it soon. Three, council should codify the Education Committee's metrics for modernization, and the city should use that system for funding decisions. Four, all city leaders should implement policy to make modernization and stabilization data-driven, transparent, efficient, and effective. And five, we should all work together to modernize all schools in the next 6 years. By meeting this goal, we can take a giant step forward towards being our best DCPS together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petrosius. Mr. Weishar.
Good evening. My name is Scott Weissar. My daughter is a kindergartner at Capitol Hill Montessori Logan. CHML is an elementary and middle school located in Ward 6, but is a citywide school. As a community, we have had to pull together and really understand what is happening in our city regarding school buildings and the health and safety of the people in them. It's been disheartening at best, alarming at worst. We've discovered the following. Our school building poses significant safety and health issues, including lead in the water, as you've heard, and also in paint that had not been disclosed and remediated properly. Our school building had never been assessed. Thus, our school was completely left off the modernization budget. We are not alone with these discoveries, and we've been working hard to advocate change not only for my daughter's school, but for many other schools as well. In response, we had no choice but to do significant research on these issues at night, after work, and after the kids are tucked in. We have had to organize significant advocacy to urge the city to address all of these issues. We have made some progress, but there's a long way to go. The bottom line is this. We need to implement policies and protocols that address all of these issues. Parents should not have to do this kind of work to have these needs met. To that end, our community is strongly supportive of the council's efforts to recommend policies to DCPS, DGS, and the mayor that we hope they will take seriously. Both the Committee on Education and the Council on Transportation and the Environment took significant steps towards addressing areas of need and policy recommendations. The Committee on Education, under the leadership of Chairman Grasso, recommended that DCPS 1 explore more inclusive ways to garner feedback and input from students during the budget process, And 2, establish a strategic communications protocol for alerting school communities on environmental safety matters in DCPS facilities. The Committee on Transportation and Environment, under the leadership of Chairperson Che, recommend that DGS, 1, establish a new systematic approach to lead testing in all public schools, 2, pilot a design-build model for school modernization projects, and 3, conduct an annual safe and healthy school assessment that would result in a comprehensive report card. We think all of these policy recommendations will be a major step forward in addressing major issues in the safety, health, and modernization needs of our school buildings. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Weissar. Ms. Brown.
Yes. Good evening, President Jacobson, members of the State Board of Education, Vice President Karen Williams in her absence. She is my constituent as well as my ward representative. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at your monthly public meeting. My name is Tiffany L. Brown. I am a fourth-generation Washingtonian, a proud product of DC Public Schools, a DC Public Schools teacher, the ANC Commissioner for 7B02, the chairperson of the LSAT at Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan, and the proud parent of 2 children at their school, one in 3rd grade and the other in 2nd. I'm here today as a member of that school community that works tirelessly to ensure that the district has a great Montessori school. I come before you today because we oppose the mayor's FY 17 through 22 Capital Improvement Plan, SIP, as it is proposed. In addition to the policy issues that my fellow parents mentioned, it is an underinvestment in our schools' needs. As a community of parents, we are pleased overall that the mayor's current budget proposal clearly responds to the need to focus on school modernization as a priority by increasing funding for these projects. The reality is, this budget does not go far enough. It leaves too many schools behind. The SIP should cover all schools. Our school, Capitol Hill Montessori, was taken off the budget that had previously been slotted for modernization in FY19 with no rationale. There are other groups of schools, many like ours, in need of stabilization and modernization that were just told, well, you have to wait until after FY22 and hope for the best. Many of our children will be long gone from the school by then. In FY22, my son will be a 9th grader and my daughter will be an 8th grader. As an 18-year veteran teacher at DCPS, I have seen time after time schools get passed over for modernization. During my tenure, I have observed the following. Bernie, the first school I worked at, was not ever modernized until it was purchased by a charter school. Garfield, the second school I worked, had only surface modernizations completed. I remember once during a rainstorm, the water poured into the building because it was in such disrepair. The next school I had the pleasure working at was Randall Highlands. That total modernization has never been completed. Next, there was Charles Young, not touched. Then there was Savoy, where I can honestly say there had been a total modernization, which had the help and financial backing of 21st century schools. My current school, Noyes, was fully modernized in the mid-2000s. I say all this to say that we're in need of a robust stabilization plan based on the health and safety needs of all students. Too many schools have serious health and safety concerns, including lead exposure, poor air quality, lack of working heat and air conditioning, high decibel levels, lack of functioning windows, inadequate security capability, and the list goes on. No child or teacher should have to be in a school with these pressing health and safety concerns. These are issues that need to be addressed in year 1 of any SIP and by measurable, effective, and accountable management of ongoing maintenance and improvement of existing schools, not over 5 years or more. We need a larger investment to modernize all schools, not just some in 6 years. Just as called for in the 2022 campaign for school modernization, the city should commit to funding over the next 6 years every school modernization. We can't afford to leave any school behind. Gone are the days of the city's financial receivership and security. Our city's economy is booming. We lead other cities with 3 to 4% annual growth, and with that, we have a surplus in our reserves. In this time of economic security and growth, we should make our children and their schools our top priority. In addition, as an ANC commissioner for 7B02, I'm asking for your support for the 20% of the school population that resides in Ward 7. I have two very important constituents that are counting on me. With the support of this body to ensure that this happens, we look forward to working with you to achieve these goals and set us on a path to safety and success for every student and every community in the nation's capital. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Brown. Thank you all for coming. The Deputy Mayor is here, and she's heard your testimony, which we greatly appreciate. Vice President Williams sends her best regards and is sorry that she isn't here this evening, but thanks you for your testimony. With that, we've got your written testimony. You're welcome to stick around and watch our dialogue with the Deputy Mayor, and I think Mr. Whedon will probably have some follow-up with your situation in particular. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're now going to call our final panel of public comment witnesses. Ms. Marilyn Holmes, Executive Director of Total Sunshine Incorporated. Peter McPherson is not available this evening. Cedric Hendricks, School Without Walls at Francis Stevens LSAT and School Improvement Team Chair. And Ibe Belinda Crowley, Historic Anacostia Arts Education. Again, the microphone has a button. Make sure the green light is on. The upper right corner of the table has an indicator for you. Green, you're good. Yellow, you've got 30 seconds. And red, time is up. You've each got 3 minutes, starting with Ms. Holmes.
All righty. Good evening. Once again, I'm back. I'm Marilyn Holmes, the Executive Director of Total Sunshine, promoting smiles in the community. I tell you, as a paramedic in the city for the last 20 years, it's been really interesting and seeing the things going on in the city, and it's really troubling to see that so many young people have as many issues as they do. But when I think about Total Sunshine and being the medic to society and promoting the smiles that we do for our young scholars, it makes me happy, and it makes me feel that our efforts in this 8th year of supporting our top graduates, they're very much worthwhile. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about a school grade incentive program, which supports DC's top graduates. I think it's a great, it was a great segue into me talking about this on this panel with the young scholars that you all were honoring just a small while ago. And I saw so many smiles. Oh yes, everyone was smiling and so happy and proud to see these young people excel and going on to Yale and great schools and doing great things. And our DC top graduates, all 66 valedictorians and salutatorians. Here's my picture. Yes, indeed. They will be going away to college from public schools, from charter schools, but they will be going to Harvard, to Yale, to Stanford, and they absolutely will need to be supported. This has been my mission with Total Sunshine over the last 8 years as a part of our school grade incentive program. Now, not only do we do this annual ceremony, we do anti-violence, life coping skills seminars in schools, and we've been doing that for quite some time. It's been 16 years of Total Sunshine in the city, and I tell you, it's been quite a road. Now, I've been doing a lot of outreach, trying to make sure that we have technology for these young people. And this year, Thursday, June 23rd, I'm sure you guys have seen this everywhere. I've been emailing it and tweeting it and putting it on Instagram and everywhere. I've been trying to reach out to everyone to make sure that everyone knows that it's time to come out and clap for our best, the cream of the crop that we have from the city, the first, not last, the ones that are doing homework right now. Now, we know that all the valedictorians and salutatorians have yet to be determined because the final grade point averages have yet to be tallied. However, these young people are not just any students. They've been getting straight A's for the last 4 years at least. And I'll tell you, that makes them very, very, very worthy of support. Now, Total Sunshine, we try our best to make sure we send them to college with a laptop. Now, historically, our funding has unfortunately not been able to do that. Last year, we gave tablets. RG3 was the contributor for that. His Family of Three Foundation made sure that these young people, all of our top graduates, and it's generally roughly 70 every year, had a technological piece for college. Now, I'll tell you, I had to pray about what I was going to say today, honestly, because I've gotten some really mixed responses and some apathetic responses from some people in places that I thought would perhaps be so happy and willing to support these young people. But I'll tell you, as I told one council person, I said, you know, I think this is what the Lord wants me to be doing. And somehow I'm very passionate about this. This is not my job. I'm a paramedic. I'm not here to talk about idioventricular tachyarrhythmias and talk about other things that have to do with medicine or talk about anything else in my life, and it's really, really busy. I've been moving, and my back is hurting, and I'm tired. But this is so important to me that I made sure that I got here today, even today, despite everything, and I'm sure everyone has a super hugely busy schedule. I just met with Chairman Mendelson this morning, and it's been quite a road. It really has. But I'm determined that we're going to send these best young people out of this city with what they need. And if someone wants to know more about our school grade incentive program, they can feel free to email me directly, info@totalsunshine.org. They can look at totalsunshine.org. It's all over the web. Or they can call the Total Sunshine Hotline. It's 202-575-0462. We're still looking for people that are proud, that want to come out and clap for these young people just as hard as we were clapping earlier, if not harder, or at least at the same decibel level. And we have also actually started to get some of the support letters that we generally get. Councilmember May, Councilmember Grosso, and also Councilmember Evans, thank you for your letters of support. Letters are great. Laptops are better. And that's essentially what I'm here for. I know I come out here every single month, and I will be back next month with a great update, I'm hopeful, on the support for these young people, because it will be right before the ceremony. I have our citywide list, and I'll just super briefly go over. Ward 1, 5 schools. Ward 2, 2 schools. Ward 3, 1 school. Ward 4, 5 schools. Ward 5, 6 schools. Ward 6, 3 schools. And Ward 7, 6 schools. Ward 8, 5 schools. 66 top graduates. They need laptops for college, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes.
Okay.
Ms. Crowley.
Good evening. This is the first time I've ever been here, so. My name is Ebay Crawley, and I am the proud parent of 2 DCPS graduates. I'm also a retired Fairfax County Community Public School International Baccalaureate Coordinator, and now I am the director of Historic Anacostia Arts Education, and it's an education advocacy that I've started since I retired. So, my comments today are regarding advanced learners at Anacostia High School and the programs that support their development. So, according to the most recent data posted on the Anacostia's homepage, the percentage of students who are enrolled in and passing AP exams have doubled from 3% to 6%. And as this improvement is applaudable, we believe that Anacostia community's future really does depend upon the graduating of advanced students from our local high school. We need our students who are graduating from our local high school to become our business owners and to become our dentists and our teachers and our leaders and our artists. And so we believe that we have to support the graduating class, and we think that the business community has to support advanced academics in order to be able to grow our future leaders. So these student leaders are important to improving not only the link between their elders, people who they live in the community with, who we want to be able to continue to live in the community because those students will provide support for their family members, but also they're the link to the future development. So Historic Anacostia Arts Education offers a museum studies and digital literacy project to outstanding Anacostia students who are enrolled in their neighborhood school. Many students who are advanced learners in the Anacostia community oftentimes leave the Anacostia community to attend schools outside of our community. So very few of our advanced learners stay in the community, but those who stay in the community need support. So we have established a cohort of 12 Anacostia students who have expressed interest in the arts and in technology. Now, sometimes those students may not have been accepted in alternative schools such as Walls or Wilson or Banneker because they may need additional literacy support, and we're prepared to provide that support because ultimately we want our students to be able to play it forward by being able to offer their new skills to the community, whether they're volunteering or participating in community forums or even engaging with businesses that seek to reach and communicate with those high school age students. So I see the light is red, so I'll tell you what I want. I want you all to support us by spreading the word that this is something that we are passionate about and that we want to. We have 90,000 people in the District of Columbia who read below the 5th grade level. We can change that by starting with one small cohort of 12 and support those kids so they can support their families and those families can grow. And so we want support. And secondly, we would like for you all to encourage that we be able to have the summer youth employment program support these 12 students, because with financial support, they are working throughout the summer and being able to receive some sort of income. It just kind of keeps that enthusiasm that we all have when we receive some financial support for our learning. I'm a lifelong learner, and so are you. We all enjoy our support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crowley. We really appreciate you coming down this evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Hendricks.
Members of the board, I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm a parent of 2 children at the School Without Walls at Francis Stevens. I'm also proud to say I'm a parent of 2 children that graduated from the high school as well. And they're the reason that I'm at the middle school right now. You know, I had a chance to get to know Richard Trogish, our principal, back during the earlier experience with my kids. And I should say one of those children wound up with one of those coveted Trachtenberg scholarships, went on to GW University and got a degree in mechanical engineering. So it's that promise that I saw, and that's what drew me to the school. Now, we have an exciting experience going on there. We have an active parent body. I should say that tonight, right now, our HSA is meeting, and I'm not able to be there with them. Today, for example, were elections for our HSA as well as our LSAT. I'm running for re-election, and I don't know yet whether I was re-elected or not, but you know, we're trying to be as much involved as we can in the governance process of the school system, and so that's why we take advantage of every opportunity to appear and speak on behalf of our school. We, like the panel earlier, have experienced some horror stories with respect to the school modernization process. We've experienced promises made and promises not kept. And that's a very frustrating thing, you know, to go to meetings with the school people and the DGA people at 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning, you know, when you got to still rush off and go to work, or you had to get up and get your kids ready for school and handle all this, and then the commitments made are not delivered on, and you're kind of left in the dark, you know, losing confidence in the process, losing trust in the skills and capability of the people that the school system sends out to meet with you, and then you wind up, after they do what they do, disappointed because the quality and the timeliness of the work just doesn't meet our expectations. We're blessed that the council, as you all know, took some action to remedy some of the problem that we have with our capital funding, but it shouldn't have to be that way. You know, where you engage a process that lacks a bit of transparency, and then you wind up having to go, you know, play the political process out at the council to try and get fixed what was done wrong to you. And then we wind up pitting one school against the other, you know, and that isn't how it should be. Now, you all probably saw this article in today's city paper that says Ward 4 parents upset by delayed school modernization. Well, I venture to say that parents in every ward are upset by the process of school modernization, and you know, at some point that's got to be fixed. I think what the council is trying to do in terms of bringing the rule of reason to the process, some objectivity, is really where hope lies. I think all of the recommendations made by the previous panel are recommendations that I can second, and if just some of that happens, I think we'll all be in a better place next year, and we'll be anxious to keep our kids in the DC public school system rather than pull them out and run to one of the private schools in town or in the suburbs, hoping that we can find something better. I want to keep my kids here in the DC public school system, and that depends upon whether or not DCPS will deliver on what they promise. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank all of you for coming here this evening. If you haven't already done so, provide copies of your testimony either to our clerk or email them to our Executive Director, John Paul Hayworth. With that, I invite you to stick around and listen to our dialogue with the Deputy Mayor for Education on facilities if you're able.
Thank you.
We are fortunate to be joined this evening by Deputy Mayor for Education, Ms. Jenny Niles. Deputy Mayor, if you would like to come to the table, I'll keep talking while you get situated. Effective teachers and able school leadership are two important pillars to student success. The third pillar, facilities, is just as vital to student success. Without classrooms that are safe, appropriate, and modern, education will suffer. In the district, many of our school facilities are decades old. We have spent millions of dollars to modernize and repair public schools. We have also allocated further millions to ensure that charter schools have appropriate space for their students. Unfortunately, the process for selecting which schools receive support and which went without was not always done fairly nor equitably. The current administration and the council have made equitable school modernization a priority, and I want to applaud them for that work. I want to also urge them to continue to ensure that every dollar of our school modernization budget is spent in an approach that will address immediate health and safety issues at our schools and provide the best facilities in the shortest time possible. Our students deserve to be in classrooms they can be proud of. So do our teachers and other school staff, for that matter. Deputy Mayor Niles, please begin when you're ready.
Great. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here. I think this is the first time I've been here in this role rather than in being a school leader. President Jacobson, would you like me to talk about lead, or should we just stick to modernization?
I think a brief comment on discussion on lead would be great. You sent us a wonderful letter that is now on the State Board of Education website, but if you wanted to spend a couple minutes on that and then move into facilities, that would be terrific.
Great. Why don't I do that? Thank you for including me tonight, and thank you all of the folks who testified earlier. When I took this new job, this wasn't exactly what I thought I might be spending all my time doing, but of course it's squarely within the responsibilities of the Deputy Mayor for Education. So I am here willingly, and not just here willingly, but in the job willingly, and taking on the responsibility for both of these things willingly. In terms of, I think that in terms of what's happened with our water sampling, the way that I would describe it is that we have had a crisis of communication and a crisis of confidence. Thankfully, we have not had a health crisis. And so while it is not acceptable that the water sampling results were not shared with parents in a timely way at our schools, I am relieved that the blood screening that's happened recently, along with the additional sampling, which I can talk more about in a minute, has not shown that we have an increase or even a dramatic number of students with elevated lead levels. Let me be clear, lead for students is not safe, and it is by no means something that I am trying to push off, but I have been in conversations daily with our Director of Health, our Department of Health, as well as DOEE, and they have repeatedly reminded me that we do not have a health crisis. We do, however, have a crisis about communication, timely communication to parents, and a crisis of confidence that this is not the only item that is bringing on this crisis of confidence. So to date, we have had actually nearly 13,000 water samples taken out of 109 of our 116 DCPS buildings. We have 57 schools where we already have the results back, and we have seen that we have 29 schools that have actionable levels of non-drinking water sources and 21 schools that have it at drinking sources. Every drinking source that we have found an actionable level, we will remediate with a filter and retest. And in the meantime, that water source is turned off. The process itself, and the board had shared with me a number of questions about this. Rather than go through those questions in detail, you'll be happy to know that we expect tomorrow to post an FAQ series of answers to the questions that you all posed, as well as questions that other school communities have posed. There is one currently there, but we're refreshing it, and so we expect that to be on the website tomorrow. So I think that will answer lots of the technical questions, although you're certainly welcome to ask me, and I'll see how much my expertise in water testing has grown. One of the things that the critical element that was not happening before was that DGS was performing the water testing. DOEE was supervising the water testing, but DCPS was not getting the results. And it's actually DCPS that is that we want to be responsible for communicating with school communities. And so in this recent round of testing, every set of results we've gotten has gone directly to DCPS. DCPS is then sending out one of three letters. One letter is all of the samples came back, and these are of all of the drinkable water sources in each of our DCPS school buildings. If there were no actionable levels, there's a letter that goes home and said, we got all the results, no actionable levels. There's another letter that says, we did find actionable levels, that tells you where, and says that it's going to be remediated. And then there's a third letter for after we go back and retest that we will send out to say, and here's the retest results. Each school will get also the detailed information about all of their water sources and what those tests are. Those are going to be posted on a weekly basis. So if you were to go to the DGS website right now, you'll see there are about 12 schools listed. And as we get results in, we're posting them not just for the school community, but also for the public at large. We also have carried out blood screenings. And we've done that because, not because we had a health crisis, though it is confirmed that we haven't, but because we did not communicate clearly with parents in a timely way. And we do not want parents to be worried about the health of their students in our buildings. Nothing is more important than the health of our students. And so we wanted to do this to make sure that students could answer the question if they had any question about the lead results for their student. In the, we have done, excuse me, I'm just looking at my notes for a minute. Great. We have done, over 300 blood screenings, and we have not found any levels above the CDC level that's attributable to the water in schools. That is good news. We also will be having 4 citywide blood screening opportunities that's in partnership with DOEE in the next month, and DCPS families are going to get a letter about that. DOEE is going to publicize that, as well as I shared it with the email with you. One of them will be a truck touch, and so we know that that's a particularly good place for little people to both touch trucks and perhaps get their fingers touched by a small sampling needle, which I know is not the best combo in the world, but certainly one of the things I should mention, and while I'm not a doctor, I've certainly now heard quite a bit about lead, and we know that lead is most detrimental to students in their earliest years, so their first and second years of life, and we have mandatory lead testing until age 6. One's body digests isn't the right word, sorry. What's the medical term I kept hearing? Anyway, responds to lead in different ways, and adults are not nearly as susceptible as children are. That is not to say that we can have actionable levels of lead happening in any of our drinkable water sources in our schools. We will also be testing, we've just begun testing on all of our DPR sites, and they will be done before our first camps begin June 19th. Why don't I stop for a minute and see if there are questions about lead, and then I can move over to modernization. Would that make the most sense?
I prefer to do all of your testimony and then do rounds of questions in order that board members appeared. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. Proceed with the remainder of your testimony.
Great. School modernization. This has definitely been one of the most complex subjects in taking on this role, and it's also one of the most important, because making sure that our kids have safe, healthy, and actually exciting buildings that, that engender the learning that we want all kids are to experience is critical. There are a number of things, while many folks have been frustrated with various aspects of the capital improvement plan, I want to point out a couple of the things that we put forward in this capital improvement plan, which are improvements and will help us move towards, I think, getting to where we need to go. The first is that in past capital improvement plans, there were not sufficient funds to modernize the buildings that were listed in the capital improvement plans. This capital improvement plan has done two things. One is moved away from having phased approaches to modernizing buildings to a full modernization approach. The reason we want to do this is because it's more cost-effective and it is more time-effective. The second thing we wanted to do was make sure that we had the proper amount of money, the appropriate amount of money in the budget when the school was listed as a modernization. So for those schools that are in the CIP, you'll notice that some of them have doubled in size, their budgets have doubled in size, and with really dramatic increases. And that was to make sure that we could actually do the full modernization of those buildings. We also, although I certainly heard it criticized before, we built the sequencing of what buildings based on objective criteria, and that was based on Councilmember Grasso's work from last year. We, perhaps not everybody would agree on exactly what criteria, but it was objective and it was transparent. And that was another component that was really vital. Also, I think I should have probably started with this in the beginning. The mayor added $220 million in FY17 and 18 to be able to do these full modernizations. And when we started this process before she had decided to do that, everything looked dramatically bleaker. I'm pleased to say that 98 out of our 112 schools will be modernized by the time that this CIP ends. We also will have finished all of the DCPS standalone middle schools and all of the DCPS comprehensive and application high schools. There's no way, I want to make sure that I also say every single building that has not been modernized needs to be modernized. I have gotten to visit all of the school buildings, and that is clear, and it's clear to the mayor as well. So I think that I will stop there so that you all can ask me questions about the modernization process. I just want to flag one thing, which is that I am prepared to talk about the process and the overall CIP. I'm not in a position, most likely, to answer questions about specific buildings, though I can take notes and see if I can get back to you. But unfortunately, my head does not remember all of the specifics about all of the buildings.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. We really appreciate you being here this evening. Board members, we're going to go in the order in which you arrived. We're going to start with Ms. Jolly from Ward 8, and then move to Mr. Whedon from Ward 6, followed by Ms. Wattenberg. Let's do a 6-minute round. If that's okay with you. And we'll start with Ms. Jolly.
How is your office planning to involve parents in the communities where schools are actually at, the people who actually use the buildings in the modernization planning?
So one of the other things that we did that I should have mentioned in making a change from previous years to this year is we have made it clear that DCPS is the final decision maker about, rather than DGS, in terms of modernizing buildings. So this is an important thing for a number of reasons. When schools have been modernized. There have been lots of questions about why have there been cost overruns? Why have there been program decisions this way? Why have there been program decisions that way? When I arrived, one of the things that seemed clear to me was that because there was no single point accountability around this, that there was lots of confusion. So we have clarified that accountability, and it is with DCPS. So DGS is in the service of DCPS. So that then goes to the notion of our SIT process, which is when community and school leadership works together. The SIT process, this year we're transitioning so that all SIT processes will be led by DCPS, not by DGS. And DGS certainly made valiant efforts to try and lead those processes, but I certainly have been in a number of conversations where people have reported getting different information from DGS and DCPS. So this way we're also streamlining the communication around it. So the SIT process has been re-envisioned, and there has been new staffing at DCPS to be able to lead that. I think we still have a handful of SIT teams that are run by DGS rather than DCPS in this transition year, but going forward, we will have all of the SIT processes run by DCPS. So community engagement in the SIT process. I probably need to, I've seen, I'm trying to conjure in my head as I'm talking the diagram that describes the different meetings. We've set out so that the SIT process, and this is actually on the DCPS website, the various different meetings and their purpose for each one relative to engaging the community. I can get back to you with further, that's not my area of expertise, but I can certainly, we can both look at the website and see what other questions you may have about it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Niles.
Mr. Whedon, and then Ms. Wattenberg.
First, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the work you're doing in both these issues. It's just critically important. I've heard from probably a majority of the schools in Ward 6, some with high lead test, others without, but across the ward, there's a lot of concern. And I think your statement about this not being a health crisis, but being a communications and probably more importantly, being a public competence crisis is 100% accurate. And I think that builds off of many of the questions that families have around the CHIP process and school modernizations and broken promises there. A quick follow-up to my colleague from Ward 8. SIT meetings are public, correct?
I think so. I'm embarrassed to say the SIT process is not, I did not remember to study that before I came, although
so I have heard
known it once.
Multiple things. I am a member of the Elliott Hines SIT,
Yep.
so I'm involved there. I've been at the Maury SIT. I've been kicked out of multiple SIT meetings, which I, of course, refuse to leave. Because as Ward 6 went through the process last year at Watkins, we received information that they were public. And that under open meetings law, they were supposed to be. But I think there's still a little bit of confusion within the staff and within the broader community, whether or not they are. I certainly treat them as such, and I believe that they should be. So if we can find a clear answer to that, and as importantly as communicating it to the public, ensuring that the staff leading those meetings are aware and they do a better job of communicating it to school communities and to the public would be very helpful. Around lead, DGS has posted lead testing results for a handful of schools tested between April 30th and May 4th. Minors tests from April 29th are not among the tests that have been published. Is there a reason for that, and when can we expect minors results to be published?
If I can, in the midst of this, I'll have, so Shane Wells from my office has just joined me, so half my brain. So yes, they are open. Sorry, SIT team meetings are open.
Okay.
Shane just helped me confirm that.
Thank you.
And we will look to see when minors' results are due in. We will check before I
Okay.
say it's going to be this week,
Yeah,
but I am 99%
But just to
sure.
remind you, Minor was one of the schools that was
Oh.
originally identified, so timely
Absolutely.
communication there is very important.
Yep, I agree.
Just in the last few days, and this was brought to me by a parent, in results that were released just this last week, schools, including Walker Jones in Ward 6 and Wheatley, have major violations. At least 3 at Walker Jones, and this is the May 11th report, are labeled as fountains with readings of 168, 89, and 29. Can you walk us through what's been done with that community and the broader community to make sure that people are aware of these results and the maintenance that's going on there?
Sure. Let me just go back to Minor for just a minute. So not only do we need to get that, confirm that we're going to have those results this week, but I'm going out to the Minor community next week to meet with the parents there. In terms of, sorry, you were mentioning Walker Jones?
Walker Jones.
So for every school, once we receive the results once DGS receives the results from the testing company, we immediately send that to DCPS. DCPS reviews it and sends out a letter, one of those 3 that I mentioned. If it's the one that says there's an actionable result, it actually lists where the actionable result is in the building, and that's sent to every parent in the school. And so they know then. What happens on the DGS side is that they immediately make sure that the water source is off. They remediate it, which for drinking sources is a filter, and then they retest it before it's opened again.
And what's the timeline for that water source to be shut off? Is that within
Immediate.
24 hours? Is that immediate when it
Yes.
comes back? Okay.
Within 24 hours, if not sooner.
Now, well, I've got 2 questions. One, how do we determine what's a drinking source? I noticed at Walker Jones, there was also some outdoor spigots that were not labeled as drinking sources. I can tell you that my children have picked up the hose and drank out of the outdoor spigots at multiple schools.
Yep.
Why is that not labeled as a possible drinking source?
Sure. So drinking sources always include water fountains, sinks, kitchen sinks, and where students are. The outdoor sources are particularly difficult to, we will tag them to say that they are not for drinking. Figuring out how to remediate them it's not, we're figuring out how to do that quickly. The other sources, we are shutting off showers as we figure out how to remediate showers. We, for boiler room and for other areas of the building where we don't expect students to be, where students are never expected to be, those are not getting a filter. Let me talk for a minute about the way that, so each source has 2 different water samples taken from it. A first one, and then after a minute of the water going through, a second one. Most, if the vast majority of even the actionable water readings that we have found have been in the first sample and actually do not have a actionable level in the second sample. Because flushing the water source is one of the ways to rid it of lead, because one of the reasons that lead is in the water is because water's been sitting there and it's been leaching out from some part of the pipe right there. So to answer your question, the outdoor hose bibs, we are figuring out what to do. We need to label them to make sure that folks and kids know that that's not for a drinking source, and there'll just have to be some pre-planning about how to make sure that we have any of the potable water sources from any of the sinks, any of the kitchen sinks, any of the water fountains for kids. And then those outdoor bibs, often after it's run through, it has a level below actionable, but I know that we want to make sure that we don't have kids ingesting it, even if it's soon to be not actionable.
Right. I'm over time, but we'll come back. I think we're doing multiple rounds.
If the deputy mayor has time, I'd love to do a second round, a shorter second round.
All right, thank you.
Let's go to Ms. Wattenberg and then Ms. Lord.
Hi. And thanks again for coming, taking the time to do this. So I have a question. So there's more money coming in, thanks to the mayor's budget, to support a larger capital budget, which is terrific. One general question is, you guys have a protocol that's made a list of schools and their order, and the council has a protocol and a list. And I can tell you, most people that I'm in touch with find that the council protocols and the order ended up being more related to reality that they face, and I'm curious about how you see the difference between the two, why they are, and whether there's some a possibility for them to be better consolidated. Somewhat related to that is in the new proposal where you go to full modernizations instead of the interim phases. What happens to schools that have had a full modernization, or maybe aren't due for a full modernization, but have a substantial set of repair issues that are beyond their regular maintenance budget, roofs and so on? How does that fit into the timeline?
Sure. So the last part of your question is what we describe as what's needed in the stabilization budget. And so there's a modernization budget, and then there's a line that allows for roofs and other significant HVAC systems that wouldn't be expected to come out of the school's budget itself. Those are anticipated and scheduled with DGS, so that and so many of those things, for instance, the windows at Logan are in the stabilization budget and are already budgeted for to happen in FY17. Forgive me, the first question you asked was about the two different sets of criteria.
Yeah.
I think I anticipate that going forward, we will be able to have a set of criteria that we are in full agreement about. The criteria that the administration put forward was as thoughtful as we wanted to make it as good as we could make. Councilmember Grasso added some other pieces and nuances, and there's some value to that as well. And so I think that going forward, I think that we have worked well together, the administration and the education committee. And so I anticipate that we'll be able to keep improving that as we go forward. And we're getting better and better at this, I hope.
Do I have time for one comment, and then I probably won't need a second round? This is really just a comment, which is when I look at the school that's most on my mind, there's just a constant issue with the budget estimates that get put forward not being realistic, and it happens over and over again, causing a great deal of cost in terms of having to go back and get new drawings, and enormous exhaustion and cynicism on the part of the SIT committees and the communities. I don't know a lot about construction. I don't understand why this is so chronic, and it seems to be, and I just wonder, as you go forward, you have this new protocol with DCPS leading and so on. Is that something that you have some optimism that you can crack that nut and get that fixed?
So I think there are two issues. One is that we are reevaluating the educational specs, which is the generic program that we would have for elementary, middle school, high school. And we want to be using that as a rule of thumb. So that's another piece of what will make us more efficient going forward, and also making sure that that the educational program decisions are driving the building design and cost. The second thing is that so while I have, in my prior life, I had the good fortune to rebuild or build 3 buildings, and the one's design when it's priced, I never experienced, and I've never met anybody that didn't experience the price being more than they had planned. I've never experienced this with somebody doing a house remodeling or any kind of construction. And so one of the things we definitely, by having ed specs, by also using the most up-to-date numbers, as you may know, one of the ways that you estimate the amount, so for our buildings that are in 17, 18 that have been planned, the numbers of how much that costs are quite good because we have a very detailed design. Even in the out years, we have a formula, but it's not designed yet. And so we have tried to do our best, and this would be industry practice, to say this is how much per square foot we anticipate it being, and so this is how much it's going to cost. There will never be a time where it's perfect. But we should absolutely be getting better and better at having both the estimate and understand that accuracy, and then making it clear whether that's what the budget line is, whether that's accurate or not, relative to this process. So I do think that we're going to improve in that area.
Thanks.
Ms. Lord, and then Mr. Contreras.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here. There are probably no two more contentious issues of concern in every community I've been to for a number of years. And I can't help but reflecting on our science students being here tonight and thinking they're the ones who are really going to solve these problems with their science and engineering skills. Facilities, lead in the water. So the bigger picture is, what can we do to lay a better foundation? And my first question, having suffered through the lead in the water crisis the first go-round when they turned the taps off during the Valentine's Day dance and didn't turn them on again until the kids had left school, will every water source in every school be tested, and is there going to be a sort of, are we going to make this part of the routine? You mentioned making schools that are healthy, safe, and actually exciting to be in. The safety sort of seems like we're lurching from, oh, wow, they tested high for lead, and then there's no process for not just communicating with the parents, but for actually addressing it in real time. So if there is a sort of a big picture plan, that would be great to know.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, thank you for asking that, because I had not. A couple things. One is that we test annually for lead in DC, and we have in the past. And while we have done a terrible job of communicating it, we were doing those tests and seeing the results and making sure we were taking action. Going forward, though, we are going to do a much better job in that we have instituted a barcoding system so that every drinkable water source, and these are the sources that are where kids are. So this includes the science lab sink. This includes the sinks in the classrooms. This includes all of the drinking fountains now have a barcode on them. And so part of this sampling process is there's a whole tagging system that goes on, and then there's the sample, and so you can match the sample to the barcode. And we will be able to do that year over year, and so we'll be able to see that same water source and be really clear that it's that same water source and what was its level last year versus this year. And we didn't have the ability to do that in the past. We also will need to have, we will put in place a robust system to make sure that we are changing the filters. Because the filters are a permanent solution to having actionable lead levels, but we need to change the filters or else that's not a permanent solution. And so once we get through this blitz of DCPS and DPR buildings this summer, we will be able to step back and say, is the level of 15 parts per billion where we need it to be? What's going to be our process to make sure? Right now we certainly have it scheduled, but how can we do this in a proactive way? How are we going to make sure that the communication protocols that we're using now, we're always using, so that DGS gets that information right to DCPS, and DCPS can share it with families? I think that there will also be the opportunity, or let me say it this way, I will shape the opportunity so that we can get input from the community this summer about the longer-term lead protocols and solutions.
And what about the charter schools? Is this just a DC public schools?
So the charter schools, PCSB actually hired a series of firms to make sure that all of the charter schools had given them this information about their water results. And so they, too, have been testing, and if they find actionable results, quickly remediate them as well. We are not seeing, as with DCPS, we're not seeing a health crisis. We're not seeing an aberrant number of actionable water sources, but it has been important to make sure that all of the schools have had this done. This is sort of our baseline, and now from here, we can make sure that we're doing it annually.
And who is actually doing the testing? Are we sending our water samples to Virginia Tech's Mark Edwards' water quality lab the way Flint, Michigan, and the way we did in 2007?
I would have to check. I actually don't know the names of the labs. I think that we're working with 2 or 3. We're working with 2. Perhaps not surprisingly, the volume that we're doing with 13,000 samples in 4 weeks, and we're not even done yet. And given Flint and given some other places that are doing this, we needed to make sure that the folks who we're working with were ready for us and that are doing it as quickly as they can.
So eventually, we may get to the point where every parent could go to a website and see what the water quality was, how it's improved, what the amelioration was. We would be able to have that sort of transparency.
Well, and right now, if you go to the DGS website, you can see the 12 or 15 schools that we already have the results up for, and that has the transparency there. We will need to, if there are any actionable sources, we will also need to update even those documents after the retesting is done so that that's illustrated. But right now, parents can have that information for those schools.
I will save my facilities questions for round 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. We'll go with Mr. Contreras, then Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I have a few questions about the on-site blood testing at schools for students. So it says here that DGS found actionable levels of lead in 29 schools for drinking water, and then in 21 schools for non-drinking water sources. But it says that on-site blood testing is only happening at 14 schools that had actionable results. What's the disparity there? Why are a number of schools, like, they have actionable results, but they're not being provided with on-site testing?
Sure. So we are providing on-site testing to schools that we did not give timely results to the parents for. And so when a school, if a school were to have actionable results, it is not typical that we then go and have all students screened. That's not a usual, because for a number of different reasons. One of which is that over the last number of years, DOE has not found any case of elevated lead levels in a student to be linked to water in school. And it's actually the amount of water that you would need to drink to have an elevated level from water is very, very high. And typically it would be a source that is the only source a child would get. And from a school's point of view, when a student is in school, it is virtually impossible that they would only drink from one source at the school. They would have it at home, they would have it in different places. So we wanted to, because we had not communicated with those families in a timely way, and the results were older, we wanted to make sure that those parents had a quick way to, if they so chose to have a blood screening done. And so we offered it to any of the 14 schools that we had not done that communication with. And we've had 3, and we have 2 more on deck. And the other schools did not ask for the on-site screening. But what we are also doing is providing 4 days for citywide for any parent in any school to get a free blood screening. The typical way going forward, what we will do is we'll get annual screening, we'll get the water sampling results. We will immediately send that out to families. If a family has a concern about their individual child, then they will actually go to their pediatrician or go directly to their primary care physician. We will have, for 0 through 6-year-olds, I think that DOE often has had opportunities for citywide, but it will be the typical way of doing it once we tell parents in a timely way is have them go, if they would like to their primary care physician.
So, once we get results for beyond the 57 schools that currently have results, up to the 116 total, will the option for schools to take advantage of on-site testing be made available to additional ones that are found to have actionable levels that weren't previously alerted?
Yes, so we are offering the on-site only to the 14 schools where we did not communicate with parents in a timely way. That's why we're doing the on-site. Because the actionable levels, we do not worry that there's a health crisis, because we don't have any evidence that there's a health crisis. But we are providing the citywide so that any parent of a student who goes to a school that has an actionable level, even if we're giving them that communication this spring right away, they have the opportunity to have a blood screening.
Okay, so if beyond the 57 that we currently have results for, if other ones were found to have actionable levels of lead that hadn't been previously reported to the school and to the parents, there wouldn't be any, funding provided for on-site testing?
Thankfully, it's not a funding issue at all. We have found the funds. This thankfully, that's not a barrier at all. It's really, when we communicate in a timely way with parents, the way that parents then follow up if they have concerns about their individual child is with their primary care physician. The reason that we are not asking parents to only do that right now is because we have a crisis of confidence. We didn't do the right thing in terms of the communication, and so to build parents' confidence and to make sure that they are not worried, we want to make sure that schools that didn't know that, even though some of our so that they, if we didn't communicate well, they have an easy way to do the on-site screening. But going forward for the blitz of schools that we just did, because we are communicating with them within 48 hours of getting the results back, if not 24 hours, we are not going to be providing on-site screening for students if a school has actionable levels. But we are providing 4 citywide opportunities for any of those families to go and get free screenings.
And where can families find information about when and where those screenings are?
Sure. So there's a letter going home, I think, this week to every DCPS parent about the blood screening and the citywide efforts. DOEE is also going to be advertising and publicizing those 4 events. And if you scroll, I think I have it in front of me because I can even list it for you right now. So Saturday, May 21st from 9 to 1 at UDC East Capitol Urban Farm. Saturday, June 4th at the Truck Touch. Saturday, June 11th from 10 to 4 in Michigan Park. And Saturday, June 25th from 11 to 3, the Raymond Rec Center. This is in the email that I shared with the State Board of Ed members. And so if you need a copy, I hope that please let me know if you didn't get it, so to make sure that you did. And excuse me, the letter to all families went out today to all of about the blood screening from DCPS to all DCPS families.
Thank you.
And thank you for that letter. It is on our website, and folks can find it at sboe.dc.gov as well. We'll go now to Ms. Anderson from Ward 4, and then Ms. Wilson-Phelan from Ward 1.
Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate your coming and speaking to the board about these matters. I'd like to move to school modernization issues, but in much of my thinking about school modernization and about, particularly in the District of Columbia, I rely a lot on data that's been compiled by a number of research institutes and think tanks and others who, among them the 21st Century Schools Fund, which published, among many of its other reports, a review of the literature on the impact of school facilities on student and teacher performance and student and teacher satisfaction and a lot of different aspects. But in 2010, it published a report on research on the impact of school facilities on students and teachers, and it was a summary of studies published since 2000, the beginning of the 21st century. And it found, among many things, that in schools with poor facilities, students attended less days on average and therefore had lower grades in ELA and math standardization tests. Attendance was found to be a full mediator for grades in English language and arts and a partial mediator for grades in math. It also found from a comprehensive review of the literature that there's a significant relationship between building condition and test scores, significant relationships between principal satisfaction, student satisfaction, teacher satisfaction, just a number of other factors. And I noted that in the budget recommendations that were approved recently, the percentage of students that was considered at risk as defined, and this is from the budget recommendations from DCPS, the percent of students considered at risk is defined by the Fair Funding Act as defined by the Fair Funding Act of 2014, is no longer a bonus category and has been moved to the community category. I'm wondering, what was the rationale for moving that out of that category? I mean, moving, or at least basically kind of devaluating the criteria for overall student achievement at a school as a factor for making, as devaluing that as a factor in determining the, I guess, the ranking of a school within the list within the modernization list, the priority list. Because that concerns me because, at the same time we are looking to focus, and as a State Board of Education, we tend to focus, we look to focus on the lowest performing schools and try and look at what we can do to turn those schools around, when really that seems kind of counterintuitive that consideration is not being taken into, given as much weight as some other factors in making determination about whether certain schools that perhaps some of the lowest performing schools are not higher up on the list of schools that are prioritized for modernization. Can you explain, do you have any ideas why that rationale, can you give me some justification for that rationale?
It sounds like that the percentage changed from the administration's set of criteria and sequencing to the councils. Unfortunately, I don't think that I can describe the councils, and it went from, I am in agreement. I think that the percentage of at-risk and special ed and ELL students is hugely important, and so the administration had weighted that much greater than it ended up being in the councils. But I think that as we look to go forward with the right set of criteria and I would describe it as tweaking at this point rather than fundamentally changing in any way. So I think that you would be an advocate for tweaking that component, if I'm hearing you correctly, going forward, that category have a higher weighting than it currently has.
Mm-hmm. Less tweaking, more twisting. I mean, I'm a little bit more urgent and strident about it, I think, in terms of how that needs to be adjusted.
Thanks for that feedback. The only other thing, actually, I wanted to mention is the two things. One is that I was happy that we could work with the 21st Century Fund on their data because they're doing really important work so that we can look at modernization. The other thing too is that our office created a set of maps that show the CIP, the current one that we're going, the CIP for 17 through 22, as well as what modernizations have happened for every school, for every DCPS school. So if you go to the mayor.dc.gov/fairshot, under maps, you'll see that we have every single building, DCPS building, and what modernizations it's had to date, as well as some other key information about it, and the CIP as the mayor put forward. It actually has not, when the budget is finally passed, if there are any adjustments, we'll make them at that time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Ms. Wilson-Phelan, and then Mr. Jones.
Thank you, and I echo my colleagues in our appreciation for you coming tonight. I think I want to first speak to the fact that in the one school where lead was found in Ward 1, the principal acted immediately, and I think actually has assuaged many of the concerns of parents. So I just want to shout out her at Marie Reed in terms of really addressing the situation head on and telling our parents what she is doing about that, and it can be a model for how we communicate in the future. In talking about modernization, I know that the administration has heard lots and lots from Garrison, and given it resides in Ward 2, I'm going to leave that to my Ward 2 colleague to talk about. But on the broader topic that does include the University of Garrison, where many Ward 1 residents go, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the the value, the role of public input in the process of prioritization. Of course, every parent is going to advocate for his or her school to be modernized, and I recognize that that puts decision makers in a tricky position in terms of weighing public opinion. At the same time, there have been a series of promises made, promises broken as it relates to Garrison Elementary, where I've seen in other schools in Ward 1 that hasn't been the case, actually, where there has been pretty decent follow-through, and when things have had to change, there's been clear communication to the families. And I think that's been really critical for helping families understand why decisions are made that are made. And I'd just love to hear any thoughts that you have about how the public should weigh in on this process in an effective way where they can feel that their voices are heard.
So I think that in many ways I'm sort of a systemic thinker. So the first piece is that we have criteria that is objective and transparent, and then we follow that. So that's the first most important thing. And to the extent that we hadn't done that in the past in a way that was transparent with the community, we need to, that's a huge step forward. Then I think the next question is, how do we communicate once it's in the CIP and that it's from criteria and that it's been transparent about the specific project itself. And I think that that's where DCPS rethinking its SIT process, making sure and shifting it so that they're the accountable party for communication as well as decision making is going to be key. We certainly still have a far way to go. It would be great to know if folks have felt, some school communities have reported to me that they have felt an improvement because of those two things. And I anticipate that we will only get better and better at that. So I think that having, starting out with the right of transparent criteria, CIP, the right amount of money, and then a clear process for the SIT. Those are the structural pieces that we need in place, and now we need to practice. Now we need to use those repeatedly.
Mr. Jones, and then I'll go.
Thank you, Mr. President. Deputy Mayor, I have a comment and also hopefully a suggestion. My comments are, I know that you have one of the toughest jobs in this city. I've worked with many of the agencies and still do in my private life that you have to deal with. And I also recall years ago when we couldn't get doors put up on schools on time. So I want to commend you because I see it every day. You guys are doing a yeoman's job. You all are doing work light years ahead of what has happened before. So I have to commend you on the work that you guys are doing. But I want to ask you a question, or not a question, but what I'd like to see, in line with my colleague's question from Ward 4. Ideally, what I'd like to see, and I know all across the city and every state and city deals with this issue, allocation of resources. I'd like to see more of it in the wards who are in desperate need. And all too often, it is the political will of folks who have the will and the influence and affluence to get things done that get things done. And their schools are getting modernized, and I know you guys are trying to get them done in Ward 7 and Ward 8, and then Ward 3 needs something, and Ward 2 needs something, but the individuals in Ward 2 and Ward 3 may have the political influence. And I respect that, I understand that, but then there are sometimes those that have must give up and must make a hard decision and say, we have to go without. If it takes a couple of years, and I know that's a hard decision to make, and put more of those resources where they're needed. Because the gaps, not only in education, are broadening. And I don't live in 7 and 8. And I've been told over and over, Mark, when you talk like that, you sound like a socialist. I'm not even close to that. But we've got to do something different in this city. And I just think we've got to think bigger than that. And those of us in wards where we don't have the great need at this moment, we've got to sacrifice. And I'd like to see the administration make some hard decisions sometimes and say, look, the schools in Ward 7 need more. The schools in Ward 8 need more. They need modernization. They need better teachers. They need everything. But we're talking about modernization. That's what I'd like to see. And I applaud you on having the, I don't know if it was your decision to have DCPS be the point for modernization, because I've seen the process over and over, back and forth, and DGS did a good job. But they're construction and real estate people. And they attempted to prioritize it based on education. But it's kind of tough if that's not your field. I know that because one of my companies, we do construction. And you do the best you can do, but you don't have the data and the research and whether it's quantitative or qualitative to make a decision that will benefit the citizens. So ultimately, I would just like to see the administration make hard decisions and say, look, we need to put more of our resources, a greater amount, in Ward 7, Ward 8, where it's needed. And I know some of us in other wards may not be happy about it. And then we need to spread it out, because we all want our schools done today. That's the reality. But we also know that that cannot happen. One of the other citizens testified, and I appreciate their testimony about the rainy day fund, but I worked in the administration when we developed the rainy day fund, and I know the restrictions on it. So it's not that easy. It's not like you can just go and tap the rainy day fund and get money. So I know you got a tough task. I understand it. I commend you. Keep up the good work. But I'd like to see you spend the administration focus more on the areas that are in need.
Thank you for the commendation. I would say that I am pleased by the progress, but I would also want to really echo, we are very far from where we need to get to be. So we have much more progress yet to go, certainly on modernization, let alone student achievement.
After my questioning, we'll start back at Ms. Jolly. I don't think everyone will have a second round, but we'll do a briefer 4-minute round for follow-up questions. Please be brief if you can, board members. I've got about 2 hours worth of questions here. I'm going to compress as much as I can into the 6 minutes I have. So if you could be brief in your responses, I appreciate it. I want to thank you yet again for joining us this evening and for the relationship you've built with this board. It's light years beyond what we've seen in past administrations, and I echo Mr. Jones, you're to be commended for it. Thank you for your support for our FY17 budget and for your monthly leadership meetings that you have with our Vice President, myself, and Mr. Hayworth. They're very much appreciated so that we can coordinate on district-wide education-related initiatives. So all of my colleagues have hit on the communications piece, and state board members field myriad calls and emails about facilities in their wards and district-wide, and communication continues to be a challenge for DCPS and DGS. Communications start late, community expectations are not set early on, and it's frequently unclear who is in charge. In particular, we have Ellington School for the Arts in my ward, which serves the whole city and a lot of Virginia and Maryland residents as well. It's over $100 million over budget. That school, that application-only school, that elite application-only school, getting funded at that level means that neighborhood schools suffer. There's just not funding for everything. So who's responsible when DGS does not meet its budget or deadlines, and what are the consequences for DCPS and DGS leadership who do not meet their obligations to our students and our communities?
So we first need to make sure that we actually have a budget that matches what the design is. And so going forward, that's what we've done. We've made sure I don't know, I have not studied all about, I certainly know the broad strokes about Ellington and some of the specifics, but if it is like what I understand, many of the past projects, only a small fraction of the amount that it was actually going to cost was ever put in the budget, knowing that it was going to have to be come up with at some other time. So there's first, we just need to get the budget number in the right ballpark so that it begins to be accurate. The second piece is making sure that we have a single point of decision-making is going to be critical, because where's the accountability in any of the decisions for any projects going forward? That I see as being, so it will be DCPS that is accountable.
So is it Dr. Beers? Is that the chancellor? Is that you?
That's the chancellor, and that's me. And so that, combined with having revised ed specs so that we are actually using guidance from ed specs. What I have understood happened has happened in different schools is that many additional programmatic things are added on. And so while that can be a wonderful thing, it has allowed some projects to get bigger and bigger. And part of the reason, the way I understand it, is that by not having one single point of accountability, it grew without somebody saying no, and without somebody saying this is what really needs to be. So that to me is the value of streamlining and making clear who's accountable for the decisions relative to the building. And then DGS, needless to say, needs to perform within the parameters that DCPS has put out and needs to follow best practice. Construction is not a mystery,
Right.
and so
this should be rather routine.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for decades. Other districts do it, and they do it very well. We've got a problem here in the city, and we need to fix that problem. I'm glad that you're working on it, and we want to do whatever we can to support that work so that it's completed and so that folks are held accountable and that our students aren't suffering. DCPS last developed an education master plan in 2006, and the capital commitment in 2012 sort of had an outline of a education master plan, but the city has changed dramatically in the last 15 years with the growth of the charter sector in particular. So would you be willing to undertake an initiative to develop a public dialogue aimed at a detailed education plan for all of the district's public schools?
So so I now chair a cross-sector collaboration task force, which your vice president sits on. And one of the 5 goals of that cross-sector task force, the sectors being DCPS and public charter schools, is looking particularly at facilities, and it's looking at the coordination of opening, closing, and locating of buildings. It is not a small hurdle for us or a small challenge for us to tackle, but the cross-sector task force, with it, those 5 goals, and in it specifically that facilities goal, is going to provide us some guidance going forward about how our 2 sectors can work together towards a plan. I think that there also is the Master's Facilities Plan, which has a number of different components. It's very explicit about DCPS and city buildings. It is not and then it has some things about charter schools as well. So, and we update that annually, and that will be undertaken again in FY18.
I'd encourage you to work on more than just guidance and actually develop a long-term plan. And I know that this board would be eager to work with our communities and our constituents to make that a successful effort with the administration. For FY17, the administration allocated an additional $100 million for modernization of DC public schools, DCPS facilities, and modernization, but did not provide equitable funding to increase per pupil facilities allowance for charter schools. Can you explain the administration's position and rationale, and when will the charters be treated more equitably?
So one of my chief goals is around equity across the sectors, and so I'm working in a number of different ways on that. As you may know, one of the big ways that our 2 sectors experience inequity is that the way that we pay schools is different. And so I can come back at another time to describe further the LEA payment system that we will be putting in place that will pay our LEAs the same way based on an actual number of students and based on multiple counts in 1 year, so that if students leave a LEA or if students come to an LEA, the LEA either loses some money or gains some money. And that's to incent making sure that our LEAs are taking the spots that they have, filling the spots that they have. In terms of we have 78 million, 78 million, I'm going to say it's 76, sorry, of additional funds towards public education in the city. 46 million of that went to charter schools, or will go to charter schools. The most important component of looking at the cost of schools going forward is the foundation amount, and we were able to increase the foundation amount by 2% in addition to anticipating the growth in both sectors. The charter school facilities per pupil by statute is actually $3,100 for FY17. We are actually above that amount for FY17. What we did do is last year we increased the foundation amount through the council, and then we also gave them one-time grants to offset the fact that there wasn't a 2% increase on the overall foundation amount. So part of the challenge is that we actually increased the facilities per pupil before we were statutorily required last year. And so this year, it still is above the statutory requirement. But why it didn't increase from last year to this year is that we've, wanted to make sure that schools had enough money, and that is the 2% on the foundation amount. And then we have many different priorities in the city, and from solving homelessness and making it a rare event to we wanted to make sure that we are tackling data systems at OSSI. We wanted to make sure we have a number of different priorities across the city, and so we did our best to reflect in a budget year. Well, it seems like we should have lots and lots of funds. With the tax triggers and other things, we actually only increased the size of our budget from FY16 to FY17 by 3% as a government. It's the lowest percentage increase we've had in the last 6 years of any administration. And so because we were living within those constraints, unfortunately, we couldn't give everything to everybody. But it certainly is important for our schools to have the money that they need. And I was pleased that we were able to have 46 million of the 78 go towards charters in the city.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to working with you and the administration to find other perhaps creative ways to continue to assist to make sure that we bring equity across the system. We'll go now again, if folks have another shorter 4-minute round, to Ms. Jolly first and then Mr. Whedon. No to Ms. Jolly, Mr. Whedon, and then Ms. Wattenberg.
Thank you. One more quick point on lead. Any level of lead in our water is unacceptable. We need filters installed if there is a test of below 15 parts per billion, and we need to ensure that all our water is safe. And I know that's not where the environmental assessment EPA guidelines are, but that will truly restore confidence from our parents that we're being proactive and that we're putting the health of our students first. On school modernizations, I agree the goal must be safe, healthy, and adequate learning environments for all, and I also agree that we need to focus more in the areas of the city that need it the most. I'd love to see a data-driven environmental assessment of our schools. We don't have that. The rankings that we're looking at, building condition and educational effectiveness, are not, at least to my knowledge, based on any clear, transparent data. And further, we need to increase the weight that we give to that column in the CHIP. I'd also like to counter a little bit. I congratulate and acknowledge the mayor added $220 million in FY17 into the CHIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. But if I have my numbers right, and I get these from Councilmember Allen's office, in the FY16 capital budget, also under Mayor Bowser, The capital budget was reduced by $330 million over 5 years. Ward 6 alone lost $125 million in the FY16 chip. So yes, we put some money back. We're not where we were just 1 year ago. And that's what's pushing many of these renovations out further. You talked about 3 improvements, and I'll get to a question here in a moment. Sufficient funds in the plans, a clear process for the SIT, and clear prioritization for the capital improvement plan that's clear and transparent. We've heard from our friends here today, Capitol Hill, Montessori at Logan, about the problems there. Utilization rates at Watkins are not accurate because enrollment and building capacity numbers, I don't believe, are accurate. At Maury Elementary, the capital improvement plan talks about it being a full modernization. We're not touching the common spaces in the proposal that's currently before the SIT. It's not a full modernization. And in fact, at Maury, the amount put forward is essentially to replace 4 portable classrooms with 6 permanent classrooms. That's inadequate for the school 2 years from now, let alone in 3 years when that will actually open. We can talk a lot about the objective and transparent criteria, but those objective and transparent criteria were not developed with adequate community input. And I'd just like to hear your thoughts on how the community was involved in that process and what you heard from the community as you developed these 4 areas of demand: equity, student demand, neighborhood population, building condition, and educational effectiveness, and what you heard from the public around how you weighted these criteria.
Sure, let me respond in a couple ways. I'm not sure I have all of the information at my fingertips. Let me actually just start, though, with the CIP 16 versus 17. One of the things that the administration has to work within is the budget, the debt cap. And so when you look at 16, the 16 through 21 versus the 17 through 22, the decrease was actually not because it was literally decrease, it was actually that the debt cap wouldn't allow as much funding for schools in that. And one of the things that we have is this sort of chokehold, if you will, on in FY19, where we have a particularly low amount of money that we can use to, so which is one of the reasons that it's sort of it's making it difficult to make all of the projects happen because we can't start them in 18 and we have to start them in 19 because of this. So that was, one is just the structure of the debt cap and the maximum that we have dictates quite a lot, and it changes from year to year. So every time we get a new out year, it changes the amount. You had asked about the full modernization. So the full modernizations are going forward, and I'm trying to look quickly to see. Mr. Whedon, do you mind just restating that the question that you had again?
Well, really what I want to get at, and I'm happy to sit offline and talk about the different schools, but I think there's a lot of questions about the data that's been used, where that data comes from, is it accurate, and how these 4 categories and the subcategory weights were developed.
Thank you for reminding me. And let me just, so Maury, the full modernization is going forward. Maury is in the middle, so it is actually not getting a full modernization. So I would not characterize it as a full modernization.
That's how
It's a
the chip
phase 2.
characterizes it, though. If you look at the line, is it full, partial, it's listed as a full modernization.
Great, well, let me,
So, yeah,
we'll go
so
back and
maybe
check.
that's an error in the data. And again, that
yeah.
gets back to the point of, is the data and how we're characterizing
And
it
you
is all
can
accurate?
share with me which document you're looking at so I can make sure that. In terms of how we determined, so DCPS did a series of gained community input on the CIP criteria and the weightings. I will need to get back to you at the process that they used. It took place last fall, and I don't unfortunately remember off the top of my head how the different components that they put into it. But
So I can say I did not receive or hear anything about that, and I'm seeing Ward 6 family members shake their heads no in the audience here. There was not a robust process around that. And I'm going to push a little bit more on the Maury renovation. One, my children attend. They'll be graduating and moving on to Elliott Hine. The renovation there is not going to impact me. But I'm really concerned there that we're wasting resources. Currently in the budget, my understanding is an unspent 16 money, the FY17 allocation, there's about $18 million there for Maury. And the proposal on the table is, DCPS has shared 2 of 4 drawings with the community. The other 2 have not been shared, and I'd ask your help in getting those documents to the Maury community in the SIT process there. And the rationale that they haven't been shared has been, we can't fulfill the promises in them. And I don't think anybody wants those promises fulfilled. They want to know what the concepts were so that they can take the best from those to inform what we're actually trying to do. But essentially the plan, as it's written, and I have a copy of the SIT proposal right here in front of me, it's to replace 4 modular classrooms with 6 permanent classrooms, and do some other work to make that happen. This year at Maury, only 4 of our 4th graders won a ticket in the lottery and will be leaving. So we'll have close to 40 5th graders returning, second year in a row that we'll have 2 5th grade classes, which is fabulous. Except we don't have a classroom for that 2nd, 5th grade next year. That's 1 classroom. The year after, we expect our 2nd grade to become 3rd grade and retain. We'll need a 3rd grade classroom that year. That's 2 classrooms. In this year's early ed program, or pre-K 3 students, we have 70 in-boundary families. Only about 30 of them are getting in. There's 40 more. If any of those students show up in 2 years, when the modernization is slated to open, that's another classroom. We're doing the math here. We're building 2 new classrooms. We need 1 more, 2 more, 3 more, and that's a conservative estimate. The funding in the plan is not adequate. And this gets back to the data-driven approach. I've been saying this for 2 years, that the enrollment estimates for Maury with the expanded boundaries are not accurate. DCPS has not engaged the community. And I could go through the same exercise around Jefferson, Elliott Hine, Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan, and others. And we need the community involved in this process. And you talk a lot about the reform SIT process. The SIT needs to meet and talk about what the needs are of the full community before we come up with these dollar amounts. Yes, a certain amount of our renovations should be driven based on the ed specs, but as we look at Elliott Hine and the $85 million that's proposed there, that renovates the whole school. Well, the school proposed enrollment's only 480 students. The school right now has the capacity for 800. So we need to make sure that the community is involved in the planning before we come up with these numbers, and that the numbers make sense for the community, not just the school.
I'm just going to say one thing, and I won't talk later, because this is the same situation in Ward 1 where we see the demand for DCPS schools growing. And my understanding from an informal conversation with DCPS is that the planning numbers didn't actually take into account what the wait lists are saying about demand for DCPS schools until Dr. Beers took over. But all of the modernizations were already en route, and the plans for them were en route in the schools that are being modernized in Ward 1. And so my worry is that we'll have this incredible demand for neighborhood schools, which we deeply want, and we continue to push out families who want to attend. Now, I know by right at kindergarten they get to go, but for example, Bancroft had a full wait list of in-boundary for preschool 3 and 4, and when that was mentioned to Dr. Beers, that was the first he had heard of it. So I know that he is making changes to incorporate that information now, but my worry is, are we building these buildings that won't meet the needs of the communities, and then even 4 or 5 years from now we'll end up with trailers again when we just went through this incredible modernization with lots of money and beautiful building space? So I think actually 6 and 1 are in similar situations there. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and you might have insight into how the planning process has been adjusted since that leadership change has taken over.
So I can go back and look more at Maury. As I mentioned, coming here tonight, unfortunately, the specifics of every school is not at my fingertips, as has been illustrated already, I think. And so we can we can go back and better understand
And
that.
I appreciate that, but again, I would ask for, as these numbers are being developed or before they're finalized in the FY17 budget, that we engage each of the communities and ask the question, does this plan, on the surface, we're not going to all be happy with the timing of it, but does this plan make sense for the community? And there are a number of communities in Ward 6 that I would say will answer that question, no. Some will probably say, there's more money here than we probably need. Others will, and they'll gladly spend it, don't get me wrong. Others will say, no, what we're proposing does not meet the needs of our immediate in-boundary neighborhood. And if that's the goal, to have neighborhood schools, we have to make sure that we're planning long-term and not wasting resources.
I agree.
Did you want a moment to respond?
I agree.
Thank you. Ms. Wattenberg, and then Ms. Lord.
Hold on, I have a cough, 1 second. I think it'll be all right. Just to add one more fact to the fact story here, my kids were in DCPS in 3 different schools. Every single school got renovated that they were going through, which I'm very happy for, and every single one of them was substantially over capacity on the day that the school was fixed. So on the day that the school reopened. So it's just more evidence that this issue of how do we account for the populations really needs to be looked at. The only other thing I want to say is as you do your job in the many ways that you do it, I think this issue of community input and the level of respect that's given to the opinions, the ideas, the facts, the realities that people in the communities can put on the table, it's a huge issue in operations. I mean, we saw it most recently in the budget hearings around the schools that were told that they're going to have to adopt a particular kind of professional development program that may or may not have taken account of their particular needs and priorities and the way it would impact other programs in the schools. Sometimes programs will be put in schools with DCPS funds, and that's fine to try them out. And then the school will be told, well, now you're going to have this program, and you have to pay for it, and the school has to take money from other programs, and so on and so on. We had an issue recently with the park test, where kids were being told to take the test, even though there seemed to be rules that would suggest they shouldn't be taking the test, and we couldn't clarify. We could never get clarity for the families about who should take them. So I'm just saying, as you think about this community input issue and the community responsiveness issue, I hope you can think about it as well on the operations side and create some easier ways for everybody to have input so that better decisions get made. That's really the point. And when parents have these issues, say around park, that there's a way to get answers back that reflect the seriousness of the issue.
Is there a response to this? I'm the second in command because I'm the oldest serving or longest serving. Is that it? Well, we have a bit of a dilemma since I was the next one to be questioning, so I will take the opportunity. First, to thank you for the support for this board. It really helps us do our job if we have sufficient resources to do it, particularly for our ombudsman and student advocate. I also want to put you on the spot just a little bit, because as a school leader, you have been through a number of school renovations and brand-new schools yourself. And I'd like to kind of tap the accountability issue that I've heard and ask you what lessons you learned that we could possibly apply to the broader school modernization issue. And then to kind of rant just a little bit, my local school, School Without Walls at Francis Stevens, we had a parent here tonight, Mr. Hendricks. It's bait and switch, it's promised, but there's been, the most disappointing thing is this was a school that was slated for closure because it was under-enrolled. It is now thriving. It has doubled in size. There are students in kindergarten who are learning Latin. It's everything we want it to be. And so when they've developed a program that would teach students to cook the produce, they would have celebrity chefs come in and learn actually how to cook the produce that they're growing in the garden and live healthy, all the things we want. they worked with food prints, they had a curriculum, they had a partner all set up, and the cafeteria needed modernization. A cafeteria, we're not talking about a big thing. And yet, it didn't come, it didn't happen, and then it had to be sped up, and all the money got eaten away in overtime, and it's just like, there are brand-new high schools that have been built by charter schools for $50 million, a third of what Ellington is going to cost. Now, granted, it's apples to apples, but we're just not getting much bang for our buck. So between your experience as someone who has created 2 extremely exciting learning environments, and this sort of lack of programming input before the stuff gets started, what can we take away to make sure that we have not just transparency, not just community input, but some true bang for our buck? Thank you.
Sure. So I think that just in terms of what I had learned in coming to this, I've talked about them a little bit or a lot already. The single point of accountability, that was one of the first things that was clear to me was vital to the success of the projects that I had worked with. And then when we saw it both on the decision-making for program as well as communication, that seemed like a really clear step forward. The second is the ed specs, and so having a clear understanding of program and then modifying it rather than sort of starting with a blank slate and just adding on. So those are key things that, from my experience doing facilities, coming to this. In terms of, you'd also asked, sorry, the last part, I should be taking notes. It's only Wednesday.
It's basically how do we get out of the sort of mode of promising and then getting bang for our buck.
So one of the other things that we need to do and that we are going to do a better job and have been doing a better job at DGS is planning. And so we probably should not have promised to get that kitchen done because we did not actually have all of the different pieces figured out. And it wasn't, while we certainly have many organizations can do construction on a dime, DGS is actually doing huge volumes of construction, and so adding additional piece outside of the typical planning process and estimating that it would take far shorter a period of time and was far less complex than it actually was. So the cafeteria, if my memory serves me, it was one piece of it, but it actually was the special cooking, I don't know if we would call it a training room, that was another piece of it. So DGS under Admiral Weaver is also working much better at being able to say, yes, this is what we can do, this is how long it's going to take, this is how much it costs, in a way that I think is different than in years past. I think that we actually create a market for construction in this city because of the volume that we're doing around modernization that is unusual. Not many cities, we create a crunch because we actually are so flat out doing so many modernizations across the city. So we have to be really thoughtful about making sure, even if it's adding something that's seemingly small, how does it fit into the bigger picture, and then be really clear with the community about what's possible. And so I think that, and not have the expectations not be met. And so working really hard to make sure that that's clear.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. We'll go with Mr. Contreras and then Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I was wondering what the public process is for developing the ad specs, and then what role students can have in that process and families in general.
That's great. I'll need to get back to you on that. It's not something that I don't think, anyway, I don't remember off the top of my head, and we'll get back to you on both of those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Contreras. You finish? Oh, wonderful. Ms. Anderson.
I'm going to go a little ward specific here, but a lot of it is said within the CIP narrative about the need to eliminate or to reduce the impact of politics in the modernization decision-making process. But many of the people in my ward, from what I hear from people in my ward, is that particularly with regards to Coolidge High School, that, you know, there seems to be a lot of politics at play that keep moving that timeline for renovating that school, modernizing that school, further and further back from what it was when the first, some of the first modernization plans were put forth, that Coolidge was very high in the list of modernizations. So, I mean, on one hand, I think it's a little bit disingenuous that there's a need to, there's talk about reducing politics as a measure, but how do you address folks who feel that politics is being played by this cyclical kind of maneuvering that kind of keeps pushing Coolidge further and further down and further, and then changing the budget for the school modernization to the point where now I believe that school is slated for modernization in 2022, which, you know, I mean, there's some politics at play in that. And is there anything that can be done to redress those, to address that, and perhaps take into consideration that politics has basically been one of the main things, it seems, that keeps moving that school further and further down the list?
So,
I mean, what kind of politics are we trying to eliminate here?
So forgive me, I don't think that I said we were trying to eliminate politics. That's not the way I've experienced this.
I'm just looking at the narrative for the budget.
Yeah, no, so I'm not disagreeing, that just from, so one of the things about Coolidge that is hard is that, we know we have a priority of completing our high schools. And so we need to make sure that Coolidge and Banneker and then Washington Met also get renovated. The hard thing about Coolidge, too, is that it's a very large amount of money. And so one of the challenges is that I described in FY19, we have we dropped to nearly only $100 million available for renovation, for modernization, instead of the $3 and the $4 million that we've had every year. And so thinking about how to renovate Coolidge in a way that is in continuous years, and in a 3 or 4 year period, combine that with the restrictions on the way that the debt cap works, that's actually what I've experienced being the challenge for Coolidge in the budgets that I've seen. I can't speak to the past, unfortunately. I don't have a lot of knowledge about what has happened to Coolidge until this point, but one of the priorities was, and right now it's not, Coolidge will be completed in 2020, not in 2022. It'll be started in 17. It'll be started in 17 and completed in 19, probably why am I reading this correctly? This is why I'm not, but I can get back to you on exactly when it was for Coolidge. My experience of the challenge has been the amount of money that it takes to renovate our high schools is often 2 and 3 times more than renovating an elementary school. And so that's part of the piece, is it's this big giant puzzle of putting together how much money we have, where the priorities are, and trying to get it, we really need to get it all done.
And I think another concern is that, the longer that renovation and modernization is deferred, the worse conditions become in the school. So you're not going to see any savings by deferring that renovation further and further down the line, because the school continues to deteriorate in terms of physical facilities. So I just wonder if that's.
Yeah, I mean, so we are starting it in FY17, and let me just see if, where it tells me when it's going to finish, and if it's finishing in 19 or in 20.
It's 19, because that's a variance.
Yeah, but let me look at what. So it was, great. It's going to be finished in 19, both from what the mayor put in and from what council put in.
What year?
19. So we're doing it starting next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Jones, and then I will conclude. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Then I will conclude. I do have a couple of really brief questions, but I don't want to forget to thank you yet again for spending so much time and for being so generous with your time. If board members have additional questions or questions that are specific to their wards, could we compile written questions by, let's say, close of business Friday, colleagues, and for your office to respond to? Wonderful, thank you. I think my colleagues, Ms. Wilson-Phelan already touched on Garrison. As you know, Garrison is receiving a partial modernization. Is it my understanding from your testimony and that Garrison and Morey are sort of in that same boat where they're in the middle and neither will receive a full modernization?
Yep, and if you want to have other friends, Hyde Addison and Bruce Monroe are also in that category.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I do see that the field work is finally being completed and that the field for Garrison should be, I just received an email from the SIT coordinator today that the field should be operational by August and usable by students and community members, and we appreciate that very much. The very first thing you said was that the health of our students is the most important thing. We're going into ESSA discussion, which also includes school report cards. And you know how much I love health. And one of my big pushes is more health data for families to make informed choices. Things like maybe the lead water testing from the different schools to make sure that that is transparent at the school that the child goes to rather than a DGS website that a family might not know about. Does that make sense to you to have all of that data in one place about a school rather than having families have to hunt and peck?
Well, thankfully, I think that we've figured out how there's a link, so there's no hunting and pecking. I think we can confirm, but you can go to the DCPS website, you can go to the city administrator's website, you can go to the DME's website, and you can go to DGS, and the link automatically takes you to the same place, and and it's housed at DGS. So I don't think that, thankfully, there should be a challenge if a parent goes online to find those results. I think that the key is and that wasn't happening before, is that DCPS needed to know the results so that DCPS could be communicating with those families and so that they're communicating directly and then making it very easy for parents to find out. And so I think that's absolutely critical. To me, I don't actually think it matters where it lives if there's a quick link that takes you to that same place, because I don't want parents to hunt and peck. I don't want them to, so as long as it's simple and clear, and you certainly can go to the DCPS website and find out exactly how to get there. And some may not know that they're tapping and going to the DGS website as opposed to another page on the DCPS website.
Terrific, thank you. And my colleague, my smartest colleague, Brian Contreras, has already alluded to this. DCPS is revising ed specs, and you've talked about that as well. We certainly want to get that student voice, but the DCPS's community action team has reached out to some of the education networks to ask them to help with focus groups to get that conversation started so that it really is a true community conversation on what these new ed specs will look like. Is that moving forward? Is that delayed? What is the status of that? I think I received an email from Elias Hoffman, who is the Ward 2-3 CAT coordinator, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we would love for that process, once it's all finalized, to move forward so that we can participate in helping make sure that these reflect the equity and the needs of the communities.
So I can confirm that that we're in the middle of the community piece for the ed specs and that they're going to various ed councils in the wards. And so I can see if I can get you more detailed information, but echoing that and just getting back confirmation of that.
Terrific. Then I will follow up with him. He hadn't responded to my email, and I thought maybe you had him waiting until this meeting, so I will follow up directly with him then. Thank you.
Could you just make sure that all the wards are involved in that process? I know our community would love to be a part as well.
What I can do is.
And we've heard nothing, so.
Yeah, let me find out what the process is and share that. I don't know DCPS's plan, but we will connect with them and let you all know what the
Thank
plan
you,
is.
Deputy Mayor. Board members, please have any additional follow-up questions compiled by close of business Friday, and we will get those over to Shane, if that's appropriate. And I apologize. I've got quite a few from various schools, as others do as well. With that, thank you. You have our appreciation for spending so much time with us this evening.
Great, happy to be here.
And with that, do board members have any special announcements before we adjourn? Ms. Wattenberg, Ms. Lord?
Hi, I just want to announce to our audience, to our public audience, that on Wednesday, June 1st, at 6:30 at McKinley High School, there's going to be a session called Why Knowledge Matters, the Need for a Rich Curriculum from the Earliest Years. The featured speaker is Daniel Willingham, who is a cognitive scientist, which is a fancy name of talking about the scientists who understand the new brain science and how our brains learn. And he's going to be talking about what the emerging science in this field says about the importance of understanding history, science, and the arts in order to read, understand, and think critically. And this is, of course, extremely important to understand as we consider our literacy policies, so that we don't go too narrow in our curriculum. So I encourage everybody to come Wednesday, June 1st, 6:30 p.m., McKinley High School. It's co-sponsored by the State Board, by SHAPE, by the Deputy Mayor's Office, by the Charter Board, by DCPS, DC Immersion, and I hope I'm not missing anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wattenberg. Ms. Lord?
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for the spirited discussion on a wide-ranging amount of issues, and it brings home just how important science, technology, engineering, and math is to solving the world's problems locally and globally. Surprisingly, many of our jobs in the city are related to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and even as we celebrated tonight's outstanding science scholars, I hope everybody will join me in celebrating our youngest science and engineers. The citywide elementary STEM fair is June 4th at Tacoma Education Campus. I've signed up to be a judge. I'm not sure whether I will actually be chosen, but it's a great way to see and the future brainiacs at work, and to really support them and to show them that what they're doing as science fair projects matter, that they count, they have value, they're valid learning experiences, and I don't think we can say that enough. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you June 4th, Tacoma Elementary Education Campus.
Thank you, Ms. Lord. Any final thoughts? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Wattenberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wilson-Phelan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we stand adjourned.